I went to school during the day, and then I went to work at night. I had a part-time job to help pay bills because we had no money. I mean, we were paying bills, we were barely making it. I was so depressed. It was like, I kept thinking, why am I doing this to myself? Like, who am I trying to prove things to by getting this stupid college degree?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking I wanted to get this degree to prove to her that doesn't matter how old you are, it's never too late in life to do the things that you want to do. And that for me was, like I tell people all the time, it was the best time of my life and the worst time of my life. And I can look back now and say, I'm grateful for that experience, because if it wasn't for those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am today. But it was hard, and it was hard on my marriage. It was hard on me as a mom. It was hard on me as a human being. I finally finished, and I couldn't get a job. This is where Origami Al came into my life.
Welcome to One World Countless Stories with me, Selena Novello. Today, I am very, very excited because I have Melissa Davis on, and I met Melissa through Origami Owl now, thank goodness. And what that is it's a company, it's like a social selling company, and I started it when I was 16, and I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about when Melissa started and what it's done for her life. And I kind of started watching her on social media, and then I met her in person. I was like, this girl, she's like amazing. She's so inspiring, and she shares so openly about real things that are going on in her life. So I'm very excited to dig a little bit deeper and get to know you a little bit better.
I am really excited to be here, Selena. Thank you so much for doing this, for asking me. My name is Melissa Davis. I am going to be 45. I think that's right. In a few months. And so, it's, I don't know, 45 is the new 25, I think. But I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I have been married almost 20 years. Next month, I have a 17-year-old daughter, which I think Selena has met, Phoebe.
Yeah.
And I was raised in New Mexico, but I was born on the East Coast. So lots of people always think like, oh, are you from the East Coast? Because I have, I guess, an accent, but I'm not from the East Coast technically. So raised in New Mexico most of my life, lived here most of my life. And I am an entrepreneur. I run a business. I work for myself, and I love it so much. I have 2 annoying dogs outside that might disrupt this. And then I have 2 crazy cats inside that might disrupt this. So we're going to see how it goes. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. So let's start with your childhood. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up for you?
Yeah, so my family moved to New Mexico when I was 2. And we moved to Roswell, New Mexico. Of course, everybody immediately assumes Roswell, like the aliens, all the things, right? But I grew up in Roswell, and my real father passed away when I was 5. And my mom remarried a couple of years later, and to a wonderful man who is he's my dad. And we moved out to his house. He lived on a ranch outside of Roswell. So I grew up around horses, chickens, goats, sheep, dogs, snakes, all the fun things. And so I was a tomboy growing up, and it was the perfect place to grow up because you're wild and free out there with all the things, and my brothers. And I was very blessed to have the childhood that I did, because if you grow up with brothers, you're going to grow up strong, but also because of where we lived and just the freedom of that, not having to worry about the things that kids have to worry about nowadays, and living so far out of town and just having the freedom to run free and be outside. And so then we moved to Las Cruces, which is where I have grown up basically the rest of my life. When I was 10, and Las Cruces is in southern New Mexico. That's where I met my husband. That's where I went to high school. That's where I went to college. That's where I met Nick, and my parents still live there to this day. And now I live in Albuquerque, which is a little bit north, but my childhood was pretty, I think there's only 3 of us left in New Mexico. I have 6 kids in my family. There's 6 of us. And so it's sort of like the Brady Bunch. My parents get married, and he brings a couple, she brings a few, and then we sort of mesh together, right? And so we have, I have amazing family. I have amazing siblings, and we're all sort of scattered. 3 of us are left in New Mexico, and ironically, we all live right here. And so it was an amazing childhood. I was very blessed to have the parents that I did, very blessed to have, the freedom, like I said, to grow up outside, because nowadays kids don't play outside. They're not outside anymore. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just growing up around animals, and that sort of led to my menagerie of animals now. I've always loved animals. My dad, we always had animals. Horses and chickens and goats, like I said, and cats. And I loved snakes. I loved playing outside. And so, having the childhood that I did, of course, I think every kid wants to eventually be a veterinarian or something along the lines of that. We all love animals, right? And so that's what I aspired to be. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be a zookeeper. I wanted to be, all of these things, anything to do with animals. And so my childhood really sort of, I don't know, it was really good. I had a really good childhood. I cannot look back on my childhood and remember anything that didn't make me happy, especially because of where we grew up, just being outside. Even when we moved into the city, we had amazing neighbors and we had a lot of land and we had, just a freedom when you grow up in, I guess I should say the 80s and the 90s, to be able to play outside, ride your bike and stay out after dark and play hide and seek and, do all the things that I don't think kids have the freedom to do nowadays.
No, yeah, you're totally right. I live on an acreage and I love it. I love having the space to just do things that I want to do. So I definitely know what you're talking about. So you said that you lost your birth father when you were younger. What would you say the effects of that were?
So my birth father had heart disease. He died, I think it was his 6th heart attack that killed him.
Wow.
And so my family moved to New Mexico because he was ill. And so living in Cleveland, Ohio, the weather wasn't exactly ideal for someone with heart disease. And so we moved to a drier climate so that he could have a healthier, better life. And he didn't. And so he passed away. I think it definitely affected my older siblings more because they had more of a relationship with him. My older sister is 10 years older than me. And then my brother is 9 years older than me. And of course, that's a huge age gap. And so for them, it was a massive, it was a really hard hit to them. And to my mother, my mother struggled obviously with that. And so for me and my little sister, I don't think the impact was as great because the man that is my father now is all I've known my whole life. And so, yeah, super grateful for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with blending families, was there any tension? Was it as smooth going in or not so much?
You know what? I don't know. I mean, I love my brother and sister, my stepbrother and sister so much. It's so funny. I don't even think of them as that anymore because we've been a family for so long. I mean, my parents, I think, have been married 36 years, 37 years. I don't even know. It's a long time. Actually, maybe 38 now. I don't know. Like it's been that long, but we've been a family for so long. I remember, of course, tension because you have 4 siblings that you're together with, and then you move into a new home and a new area, and you have these 2 other extra siblings. And I'm sure they felt the same way, but my sisters immediately meshed. I think for the boys, it was a little tougher, but I just remember growing up, I love my brothers. So I think they were more of an influence over me than my sisters. So I don't remember there being a lot of tension for me, so to speak, but I'm sure for them, there was a lot.
A lot, yeah. And so moving kind of into high school, what was that like for you?
In high school, it was different because it was just me and my little sister. My other older siblings had already moved out. Like I said, they're, significantly older than me. And she'll probably, if my sister watches this, hate that I just said that, but she is. And so for me, it was different because I was technically the older kid at home because my little sister is 2 years younger than me. And so it was just her and I at home. And high school was tough and not so tough. I always say it was the best years of my life because I was, it's like, it's fun, it's free. And I had a great time. I was very social and I love my friends and I was very active in all the things, student council. I was an athlete. I loved being active and I was in broadcasting. I was part of the news program in the morning. And so for me, it was like, I did everything I could to soak up all of those moments because it made me happy. You know what I mean? Sort of oblivious when you're in high school, right? But I was very wild. My poor parents, my mother, now I look back and I knew eventually someday I would come to this day, but I look back and I think, I don't know how she survived those years because I was wild. For the siblings that came before me, I know that she had experienced things, but I think by the time it got to me, she was tired. And also I was probably the craziest one. So it's the truth. I know you're not shocked. I know you're not shocked.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean when you say like high school was just like so awesome because you could just, it's kind of like a safe little bubble where you kind of go and it's a safe little bubble. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So you said you always wanted to be a vet. Did that continue on into high school? And like what happened when you graduated high school?
I wanted to be a vet, so much so that in high school we had a program where I was able to intern at a vet clinic my senior year. So my senior year in the mornings, I spent all morning at the vet clinic. I got to help with surgeries and um, pre-op, post-op, all the things. I got to, learn the inner and outer workings of a vet clinic and what it was like to be a veterinarian. And for me, I thought maybe a vet tech would be something smoother for me, not as much a veterinarian. And it wasn't even the surgery aspect. I think for me, it wasn't even the school aspect. I was not the best student, not because I didn't want to be. Well, yeah, because I didn't want to be. I just didn't put my heart and soul into my studies. And for me, school was a chore. It was a chore because I didn't look at it the right way. I always tell my dad, like, hashtag blessed that I even graduated. I didn't have the worst grades, but I wasn't the best student. And so thinking about being a veterinarian, it changed. It changed for me after high school because there were certain parts of being a vet that I just couldn't handle, like certain surgeries, like the eye surgery or the ear surgery. And I don't know, to me, I think I was just afraid. I was afraid to pursue it and afraid of failing at something and, pursuing it, spending the money on it. So I didn't pursue it after high school. I actually went to college at NMSU down south. And I dropped out my first year. I dropped out. It was the day after the Pearl Jam concert. So I blame Eddie Vedder for all of this. But I love him so much. But I remember this. I remember, being in college, going to college, I wanted to be a zoologist, and they didn't offer that program at NMSU. So I knew that eventually I would have to either switch majors or go somewhere else. And so for me, school, like I said, was a chore. So when I got to college, straight out of high school, I didn't want to be there. I barely just showed up, and I felt guilty for spending my dad's money and for not putting the effort in that I probably could have. And so, I worked, and like I said, I barely showed up, and college was just a party for me. By the time I got there, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do the schoolwork. I didn't want to participate. And so the day after Pearl Jam, I remember it was raining, and without hesitation, my roommate was like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "No." I walked into the admissions office. I handed him my ID and I said, "I'm done." And he looked at me and he said, "Okay." And he literally cut up my identification card right there and said, "You have 30 days to move out of the dorm." And I said, "Okay." And then I called my dad and he said, "Thank you," because he knew. So for me, it was one of those experiences that shaped my entire life. That day, Eddie Vedder changed my life. Like, I would say now, looking back, for the better, obviously. But yeah, that moment.
Yeah. So how long were you in college for then?
Less than a year, that first year. So I went for less than a year, and I just hated it so much. I really hated it. And I was somebody who's always worked my whole life. Like, that was bestowed upon me, that work ethic, to work hard. And, you grow up with animals and grow up in the country, and you grow up, through high school, I had jobs, and I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to work. And so, yeah, I dropped out. To become a gypsy.
I
My
mean,
dad, yeah.
what a scary thing to do, because I just recently dropped out of university.
You did?
Yeah, so our systems are a bit different. Like, we've got universities and colleges, but I don't know what a university rank. I don't know how it all works. But anyways, so after a year, and my first year was online due to COVID, but I dropped out, and it was the hardest decision I've ever made because I'm a hard worker just like you. I put so much effort into it. I did not fail whatsoever. I did better than ever expected. Like, I gave it my all, but I didn't want to be there just like you. I wanted to be traveling. I said, this is what I said, the grass looks greener on this other side, but I'll never know if I don't try. I'll never know. So this is my year of my gap year, taking that leap, but it was hard. So I want to hear about what was going through your mind, because I was afraid of disappointing people that I love, like my parents.
100%. And I mean, for me, it was more of the fact that I already knew that because I wasn't showing up all the way. It was I felt so guilty. I mean, my dad, looking back now, I mean, I pay for private school for Phoebe, so I know how hard where that money comes from and how hard you work for that money. And
Mhm.
so I felt guilty spending that money, knowing that I was wasting his money. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was more of like, I am so sorry, but he actually said thank you to me. He said thank you for this because he knew that I knew. And so for me, I got to the point where I was just like, I cannot do this anymore. If there's one thing that I can do to make them proud, it would be this, to walk away right now, because it
Wow.
wasn't fair to him for sure. And it wasn't fair to me. So yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So what happened next?
So next I packed my bags and I moved to Washington State. My brother lived up there and he owned a diner. And so he said, "Come on up and you can live with me and work." And I said, "Cool." So I moved to Washington and I actually lived with my brother and worked doing like I said, I just wanted to work, and it was somewhere new and exciting for me because I had always grown up here, right? And so I moved up there. I loved the weather. I loved the people. I loved being with my brother. We had a great time, many good years up there. And so that's what I did. I just sort of worked and I didn't go to school. I didn't even think about it. And, for me, working was what I wanted to do. I wanted to experience life, and college wasn't enough for me at the time. For me, it was like, I don't want to be tied down. I had friends that were, busting through college in 2 to 3 years because they wanted to have a career. I didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life at that point, but I knew that I didn't want to be in school. So I just worked.
Right. That's so crazy. I mean, it feels like that was like what was right for you, right? So that's
It was.
awesome.
I mean, it was. And then, I was so young that like I said, when you're that young, I mean, you just think that back then it was so different than it is now. And you think that you just think like the world is your oyster. That's how I felt. And I had no cares or worries. I mean, truly, I didn't. I had a roof over my head. I had a job. I loved what I did. But I just, it was so different. And it's like, I don't know. You're just so carefree when you're that age. And I was, 19 years old, and um, I didn't know what I had wanted yet. And I actually, oh, dumb me, I had a friend, I actually got married. I just got married. I did get married. I know you're shocked right now. This is not the husband I have now, but I always joke with him, like, you're the longest marriage that I've ever had. But I eventually left Washington. I moved back to New Mexico,
Yeah.
and I moved back to New Mexico, and I was working with my mother, and a friend of mine introduced me to a friend of his, and he was in the Navy. And that for me was like, again, you're young and you don't know any better. And we got married, and that sort of was a chapter in my life that I don't regret. I have to say this: I have zero regrets. I tell people all the time, you never regret anything, because at one time it was exactly what you wanted. And so for me, I have no regrets in my life. At the time, you're thinking like, oh, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. But I
Mhm.
got married. We moved to San Diego because that is where he was stationed.
Mhm.
And then from there, we sort of just, yeah, it was a crazy time in my life. I worked in San Diego. We struggled so hard. Of course, that marriage was not ideal for my family, my parents. My mother was horrified. His parents were horrified. And to be honest, I think we didn't know what we were doing. We were just young and dumb, right? And
Mhm.
we ended up back in Washington State with my brother because I knew that there was more opportunity up there. It was easier to live. The cost of living was less. California is crazy. And we were young. We were barely married. We didn't have a place to live. It was crazy. But like, this is my life. This is how I am. I feel like I am just a nomad at heart, like a gypsy at heart. And for me, I wasn't afraid because I knew that eventually it would be okay. I was married to him for about 2.5 years. And then that's where, when you say disappointment, that's where I find myself most disappointed, because the day that came that I walked away from that marriage, I felt more disappointed that day than I did leaving college, because I knew it was a bad idea. And I knew that I was going to disappoint my parents, and I disappointed myself mostly too, because
Yeah.
I had made a bad decision. You know what I mean? And so it's like you become ashamed, and you become I was just so ashamed and disappointed in myself, because I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? And now what are you going to do with your life? Right.
Yeah.
So
And how did you pick up all the pieces after that
I
divorce?
had I had some good friends in my life, for like 30 days. I I didn't do a whole lot. I had a job, but I barely made it. I remember going through, and it wasn't even that I was depressed about the marriage breaking. It wasn't because I was devastated about there being no love. That it was a loveless marriage. I mean, at this point, we were both just hanging on. And I just remember being super depressed because I was disappointed in myself and
Yeah.
ashamed. And I drank a lot. Like I was drinking a lot. I was not leaving my apartment. I was just constant. I had friends that finally came over and they're like, it's time for you to shower and move on with your life. And so I
Mhm.
am so grateful to them. And that was the day that I picked myself up and said, you know what? Like, you got to get through this. You can't lay on this floor forever. You can't drink one more bottle of wine. Like, you have got to move on with your life. And so it was about a month that that happened. For a whole long month, I remember. It's
Mhm.
very fuzzy in my life. Like, you know how sometimes your brain sort of like shuts, blocks things that are traumatic to you. I
Yeah.
feel like that for me was trauma because I was so ashamed. And I feel like for me, that's when I first felt what depression felt like. Does that make sense? I hadn't felt that
Yes.
before.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it was a pretty hard time in your life then. I
yeah.
mean, you
I
picked
mean,
yourself up, but it was a hard time. And I'm sure the feelings took a while to go away. So, what did you continue to do to get to a
I
better
worked.
place?
I just worked. I put myself into my job and I had great friends that I worked with. And, I lived in a part of the country that, I mean, it's so beautiful up north. The Pac Northwest is just the most beautiful place. And I just really took advantage of where I was and the people that were in my life that were good for me. And that's what I did. And I eventually moved back to New Mexico. My mother ran a business and I moved back and I worked for her. And I remember again that disappointment of moving back because I was like, oh, here I go again. Now I have to go back home. I'm the one that didn't graduate college. I'm the one that, was supposed to make something of her life. And I haven't done any of that yet. And so you feel it. You feel the disappointment. And I
Mhm.
remember not being afraid because again, I was the type of person that was like, I'm resourceful and this is how I roll. And I was very spontaneous. So I wasn't too worried because I knew I had a place to live, but I was very sad. I was very disappointed in myself.
Mhm.
It's not the life that I had planned for myself.
Yeah. And I'm sure at this point you were, I think a lot of times we put this on ourselves. We go inward. We think that everyone else is going to be sad. But I mean, it sounds like you felt like you disappointed yourself and others. So it's like this whole thing that you really have to dig through and work your way through. So you move back home. What's next?
I move home and I go to work.
Again, just
I'm
work.
lucky that I have a hometown that I do, and a lot of people. And I have worked. I always say this to people: if you worked in the food service industry, you can do anything, anything. They're the hardest working. That is the hardest working industry to work in. You
Mhm.
learn everything when you work in food service. You learn how to be resilient. You learn determination. You learn grit. I mean, you learn speed. You learn how to move. That is where you earn your hard shell, right? And so
Mhm.
for me, it was like, all right, so I actually moved back home and I was a bartender and I was a lifeguard, went back to doing all these things. And so I sort of had like a multitude of jobs
Mhm.
because I liked money. And I was like, all right, you know what? I need to prove that I can earn money and that I can live on my own and then I can do the things. And then I met my now husband. So this is where I met Nick. He came into my bar one night and then we cultivated a friendship. And then I would say about 6 months into that friendship is when we started to date. So by this point, I had already been divorced a couple of years. It wasn't like I moved right
Mhm.
on. I really honestly have to say this. When I was in high school, I swore I would never get married. I swore I would never have kids. I wanted to be a vet. I wanted to be a zoologist. I wanted to be a photographer for National Geographic. I did not want to be tied down. I had
Mhm.
all these high aspirations for myself. And going back to your hometown as many times as I had, people always say this is the land of enchantment. They're totally right. If you ever come to New Mexico, you just don't leave. But I remember meeting him and it was exciting. I hadn't felt that in a long time. And it
Mhm.
wasn't like, any other relationship that I had had because we were friends first and foremost. And so we
Yeah.
cultivated that first and then we got married. We got married the right way. Our families were present. And that's when we moved to Arizona. So we actually moved to Arizona. And I have to say that even though I despise living in Arizona because of the heat and because of the traffic, that was a couple of the best years of my life because the job that I had, I truly loved.
Yeah.
And it was a very busy time in our life. And I met a lot of friends that I still have to this day because of that lifestyle that we had.
Mhm.
But that is where we started our life. I say that's where my life started. Prior to that, it was sort of like, I was just floating along, trying to figure out where I belonged
Mhm.
and not trying to disappoint. I was so worried about disappointing my parents and disappointing everybody else that I forgot to worry about myself more. Do you know what I mean? And so
Totally.
that's an important lesson, I think, for younger, like the younger crowd. Like, don't worry about anybody else. You need to worry about you first and foremost. And so when we lived there, that's when I got pregnant. And that's when we got pregnant with Phoebe. Again, wasn't going to have kids, and that happened. And for me, I was terrified because I thought, oh my gosh, I can't be a mother. I don't even know how to be a mother. Like, I don't even know how to be an adult. Like, how am I going to take care of this child? And
Mhm.
so, and then I had this sense of guilt, like, I have made nothing of my life. How am I going to bring this kid up, not having, done really anything with my life yet? And
Mhm.
so I gained 100 pounds with that pregnancy.
Wow.
That's, I think, when I think of it's now, thank gosh, going back to Arizona as much as I do for work, I don't have as much PTSD as I did, but I used to, because that is where everything for me, the most joyful part of my life and the worst at the same time, started for me.
Yeah.
And so I actually, when I was pregnant, and she's my only child, we have no more kids after that. It was so traumatic and awful. But I remember the first 4 months, I lost so much weight because I was so sick. And then, so really in 6 months, not even 6 months, it was like maybe 4 to 5 months, I gained 100 pounds like that. They thought I was sick. They thought something was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. And so you go from being an athlete your whole life and being very active and being on this side of the mirror to gaining 100 pounds. Granted, you're pregnant. So you're like, okay, I have to give myself grace. I'm carrying a child. As soon as I had Phoebe, uh, it it was like, nope. And so now, 17 years later, I have this beautiful daughter who's amazing, and she's going to do great things with her life. And I can't use the excuse, oh, this is my baby weight. Like, you just can't. And so for me, 17 years ago, after having Phoebe, people talk about postpartum. They talk about, um, I don't remember having postpartum. I remember just being angry because no matter what I did, I was this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
that's where everything sort of went. For me, I had this beautiful daughter. I had an amazing husband. We struggled. We struggled because he was the only one working. I was raising this child. I wasn't working. So for me, having a completely different role in my life, and it was tough because I didn't know how to be a mom. I felt like I wasn't a good enough mom. I
Mhm.
felt like I wasn't emotionally connected to her, because I hadn't wanted to be a mom for so long. My whole life, I was like, this is not what I was supposed to do with my life. And, I kept thinking about that over and over in my head, and then not being able to lose that weight and being physically, emotionally, and mentally disappointed and angry in myself.
Mhm.
Um, and so, of course, I go through all the things to try to help myself. I start going back to the gym, and it wasn't even a food issue for me at the time. And like, for me, I wasn't eating enough. And still to this day, that's my problem. But I lost the same 80 pounds by the time she was 5, 4 times, and gained it back 4 times. So my body was like,
Yeah.
we're going to play this game for a while. So I made a decision when she was in elementary school, like really early on, like I think she was almost in kindergarten, that I was going to go back to school. I was going to go back to college because I was like, I want to get my college degree. It's time. I am now in my 30s, and I feel like I am mature enough to make this decision for myself.
Mhm.
So I decided to go back to school, and I knew the only way I could do that was to do it online because I had to take care of her. And he worked during the day. I went to school during the day, and then I went to work at night. I had a part-time job to help pay bills because we had no money. I mean, we were paying bills, we were barely making it. I
Mhm.
was so depressed. It was like, I kept thinking, why am I doing this to myself? Like, who am I trying to prove things to by getting this stupid college degree?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I wanted to get this degree to prove to her that doesn't matter how old you are, it's never too late in life to
Mhm.
do the things that you want to do. And that for me was, like I tell people all the time, it was the best time of my life and the worst time of my life. And I can look back now and say, I'm grateful for that experience, because if it wasn't for those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
But it was hard, and it was hard on my marriage. It was hard on me as a mom. It was hard on me as a human being. I finally finished and I couldn't get a job. This is where Origami Al came into my life. And
Okay.
at this point, I had been doing triathlons. I had been trying to lose that weight again, trying to get healthier, more fit. I like to be active. And I went and I had done a triathlon. And after that last triathlon, I remember being so depressed in my head. And remember, early on in my life, I didn't even know what that felt like. And I truly don't think people know what it feels like until you get to the point where you now there's nothing else. It's just that feeling. And I remember being so deep and dark in that hole that I didn't even know who I was anymore. I felt like a hollow person. I was like a shell. And people around me could see it. And so I had gone, I actually was in the car with my husband, and I just started screaming. I started screaming, and he pulled the car over and he looked at me and I said, I need help. I need help. Something's wrong with me. Like, I don't feel okay. And I don't feel like I'm going to be okay. And so the next week I went to the doctor and I basically said, I don't feel good. I don't feel right up here. Something's wrong with me. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, but I don't want to be here. I don't want to be on this earth. I don't want to live. I have nothing to offer. I am a disappointment. I am this. And they put me on some pills. And so I remember thinking to him, if these are going to make me gain weight, I don't want to be on these pills. He's like, no, you're going to be fine. So I get on these pills, and in 2 months, I gained 40 pounds. And
Wow.
so I'm like already depressed. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, like this guy did not hear me. And I'm still doing everything right, and the pills made me feel like a zombie. I was barely getting out of bed. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to, nourish my body, and I didn't have energy to take care of my kid. I didn't have energy to look for a job. I didn't have energy to live. So I go back to the doctor and I tell him how I feel. And he says to me, well, you're fat. And I said, okay. And I said some choice words to him that I will not
Wait,
use here,
he
but
said that to
yes,
you?
he did. He said, you're fat.
What?
And I said, I know. That's why I'm here. And I'm depressed. And I told him, this is not what I need. So I'm standing there in this office, in this doctor's office with this man, and he's telling me that I'm fat, and he's telling me that I can't just get off these pills. And I said, they don't make me feel good. And he says, they're not supposed to. I'm like, what is the purpose? What am I doing? It was just,
Yeah.
it was the one point in my life where it was like such a whirlwind, right? And so I remember leaving that office and getting in my car, and I literally remember wanting to drive my truck into a wall. I remember leaving there and feeling so defeated and like screaming in my car. And like, not a lot of people actually know this part of this story, but I got in my truck and I remember just gunning it. And I remember thinking, if you hit a wall, it doesn't matter. If you die right now, it doesn't matter. Like, I got to the point where I just didn't care. And I
Wow.
remember zoning out, and I don't even remember how I came to. I just remember I did. And thank God, because I was in traffic. I was driving crazy. And I remember, I really honestly feel like I blacked out. So I remember pulling over and like breathing and calming down for a second and getting myself back in, like, okay, what is wrong with you? Like, something's wrong with you. And these pills were so bad that I went home and I threw them away. I immediately tossed them away. I was like, I can't take these anymore. So
Mhm.
I went to a different doctor. I got into a different doctor, and I was, they give you this whole like test. Like, do you feel like you're going to harm yourself? Yes, I do feel like I want to harm myself. And they
Mhm.
don't take you seriously. They're like, oh, well, your child is 5 years old, 6 years old. That's normal. I'm like, that's not normal. I don't feel normal.
Yeah.
Um, and I couldn't get a job. I finally had a college degree that everybody wanted me to have. And nobody would hire me. I was either overexperienced or not experienced enough, or I wasn't the right fit. And I just kept thinking, what was the whole point of this? Why am I on this earth? I
Mhm.
can't help my husband pay bills. I'm a worthless mother. I'm a worthless human being. And I went from pill to pill to pill to pill. I gained back about 85 pounds. So on top of the 40, another 45. I just felt I had no energy. And again, multiple times where I was in my car, I don't even know why they allowed me to drive. I don't, or I just wanted to drive off of a cliff or hit a wall or run myself into anything. I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And I remember going home and being afraid to tell my husband because I didn't want him to freak out.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where I attempted my life so many times that I finally found the right person in my life, the right physician, and he found the right medication for me and the right help. And it was in that 3-month period where I found Origami Al. And I remember just crying to this man that he could never quit being a doctor, and he did, by the way, and I lost my shiz. But he said, there's a reason for this. There's a reason that you have gone through this. And I remember I actually punched a hole in the wall at our house. I'll never forget this. I went home after this appointment and I was so angry at my body, at my life, at the way that I felt, at my mind, at how I could allow myself to become this person that I had not expected, that I remember going home and I remember punching the wall. I punched a hole through the wall. And my husband had came home at night and he just looked at me and I was like, and he didn't say anything because he knew. I mean, it was like, I have nowhere to let this out. Like it's trapped inside of me. I don't know who I am. It was awful. And I thank God for that man. I thank God for that doctor because he did save my life. And he kept saying to me, there's a reason for everything. This happened to you for a reason. And I'm going to tell you right now, everyone says that and you hate it. You hate when people say, oh, there's a reason for this. This happened to you for a reason. You've got to find the lesson in this. And at that point in my life, I just felt like I had been through so much. And if you had known me when I was 16, you would never have guessed that I was going to be somebody that would attempt their life multiple times. I mean, multiple times I tried to take my life. And you would just never would have thought that if you had known me when I was 16, because I was the happiest, loudest, brightest person. And then I wasn't. So I didn't know. I was very confused. I mean, it's confusing when you go from being the life of the party to being someone who doesn't even want to be here anymore at all. And then I found Origami Al. And I always tell people that saved my life and they laugh, but they have no idea because if I'm telling you, and you've heard me say this, if Origami Al had not fallen into my lap that day, I know I would not be here on this earth today. So I say that to people. 10 years and counting I've been here. And it used to be hard for me to tell that story. I actually told you things that nobody else ever even knows, not even my husband. Like he just doesn't know. But I learned over the years that it's so important that I used to be ashamed to tell people that I was suicidal, that I was depressed, that I suffered, because I didn't want people to judge me for being depressed or being on medication or being overweight or, going through these struggles. And it's like, then a very good friend of mine, basically has taught me the last several years that you have to remember things happen for you and not to you. And he reminds me of this very often. And so now I can look back on that part of my life. And now I know what that doctor said is true. Everything happened to me for a reason. It has really helped me find my purpose, the purpose I didn't think I had. Has molded me into the person that I am today for my daughter, for myself, for my husband, for anybody that is around me. And I find that sometimes when I talk to people, like my tattoo artist, this is an example. I was sitting with him a few weeks ago working on my sleeve and he stopped working and he said to me, he had me tear up the other night. And I said, why? His wife is a part of Origami as well. And he said, I heard you talking on this Zoom and it shook me. I had to leave the room. And I said, why? And he goes, because I tried to take my life too. And he showed me his scars and we talked about it. And he said, people like you and I are rare because we can talk about it without living in it, that moment still. And he goes, I want you to keep talking about it because it helps people that have been there. And that, I ain't gonna lie, I left that appointment. I sat in my car and I cried because you just never know who's watching and who needs to hear what you have to say. So I think what you're doing is really important too, because you're helping people heal and you're helping people share their stories so that somebody else can heal.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And I just need to say, like, wow, thank you for sharing that. Like, I have literal chills. I felt every emotion that you have talked about. And I'm just like, I want to cry. Like I'm filled with
I
emotion
actually
right
had
now.
a couple of, I was trying not to because I didn't want to ruin my
Me too.
mascara.
I'm trying to keep it together, but I'm like, I'm on the verge of crying because the things that you had to go through were just awful. Medication, doctors treating you incorrectly, saying those types of things to you, and over again, failing and not having an outlet. And look at you now. Like I see you now, and I'm like, how strong, like you are so strong. I can't even tell you how strong you are. I do not know necessarily how it feels to want to kill or like end my life, or harm myself, but
Thank
I've
God.
gotten to a really dark place where I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so sick and tired of everything. And it's sad. It's sad that we have to go through this, but with your story and you opening up and sharing, I know it's going to touch people because I know there's people like you that have gone through this experience. Heck, I've felt things that you felt as well at such a young age. It's sad to think about, but the moral of the story is to see where you are now and how you, after another kept going, even when you really didn't want to, which is so powerful. So I thank you for opening up and sharing. And I'm like, I'm speechless. I really am, because it's so powerful. And I feel so like, whew, like just like,
I want to say that like being somebody who I had such a tough exterior around me because I didn't want people to know that part of my life, to know what I had gone through. Like, you know, they always say never judge a book by its cover. It's so true. And I try very hard in my own life not to do that because of the experiences that I've had and the things that I've gone through. You truly never know what somebody else is going through ever. And I have lost many friends to suicide. I've lost people in my life to suicide. And it's a tough thing when you finally do open up because you've got people in your life that are always like, are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? I promise I'm doing okay. And so I actually have this inside, it's not really a joke, but it's sort of like an inside thing I have with that same friend who taught me that lesson. And he says, we always ask each other, how are you doing today? And if we say I'm doing all right, that means that we're just doing the bare minimum, right? We're feeling the bare minimum. But if we say I'm doing good, that means that we're doing, we're doing a little bit better than we were the day before. And
mhm.
so for me, it's those important check-ins like that, like, how are you doing today? And if I say I'm all right, then he knows like, okay, you know what? Like I need to be a little bit more on this side today with you, but also just having somebody check in with you, even though I know that now where I'm at in my life, I, I, I never thought I would be, I honestly didn't know I would be here. I mean, who would have thought me buying a locket and then signing up with a company? I had a college degree. I was like, I have a college degree. Like, what am I
Yeah.
doing? That's how I felt. Who would have thought that 10 years later, I would be helping other people find that purpose? And I don't just mean like, sharing products. I mean, finding their voice, finding their authenticity, living their life, not being afraid to shine, not being afraid to show their face, not being afraid to step forward and be judged, because you're going to be judged regardless what you do in your life. Just do it anyway. I mean, that's really how I feel. And so I just want to say that don't be afraid to share your story, and don't be afraid to use your voice and be your true self and keep going. Because I mean, like I said, there, I just can't imagine. I can't imagine now looking back. Um, I'm so grateful every single day. I'm super grateful that I am still here and that I did find the strength to go on, because so many have not, and that makes me sad.
Yeah. And exactly what you said, the exterior, a lot of time, especially with social media, you're
That's
just seeing this exterior, this maybe person that they're this role that they're trying to fulfill, but you never really know what's going on in the inside. And for me, I struggle with that because I felt like I always had to be the light. I was always trying to make people happy. I never wanted to open up like about my struggles until I had clearly passed them, learned the lesson, because I was like, I don't want people to know. But now I'm learning, I'm super vulnerable now. Like I talk about lots of different things. And it's a very powerful thing. And I think the most powerful thing is that you're not alone, that
Yes.
with me opening up, like how you opened up and your tattoo artist was like, I've been through the same similar things. That is the power in sharing your story, that you are not alone, they're not alone. And a lot of times it feels like you're alone. Like it
Yes.
feels hard. It feels really like there's no way someone is feeling the way that the similar ways, but it's true. You're not alone. There is people that have felt that way before you. So I just want to thank you again for opening up and sharing about that part of your life, as it's very vulnerable and a very raw thing to talk about. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I want to say to you, you are a light. I remember when I first met you, and I remember that. And to this day, I remember that day we first met. And so you are a bright light, and what you're doing is so important. And I was so, so excited to do this today with you, because I know how important now it is, and not to be ashamed to, vulnerability is a superpower. It is, it truly is a superpower. So you being vulnerable is your superpower. It truly is. And remember that, because I was at that point in my life where I didn't think I was ashamed and I was embarrassed. It's like, you don't want people to see you cry. I was not a crier ever. I didn't cry until about 3 years ago. Chrissy Weems actually broke that wall down. Her and Tyson broke that wall down for me. And I sometimes blame them now to this day, because I can't stop now. I'm so emotional. Like,
it's
but
like when you lift the dam up, it's like
they broke it, they cracked it, and the wall is down. And so I try very hard in my life to live with gratitude every single day, finding the good in every day. There's going to be bad moments in your day, but that doesn't mean you have a bad day, right? You always have to have that gratitude. And then also, of course, and living the truth, and being honest and living authentically is very important for me. Because I didn't for so long. I lied to myself and to others. And so I don't know. I'm just very grateful. So
That's so awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about Origami Al. So that came into your life. It changed your life, like quite literally. And I know now more than ever that you are not exaggerating that. And so I want to talk about what that has done to change your life, and the highs and lows of being your own boss and being an entrepreneur.
it is, you talk about social media, and I always joke, like, it is such a highlight reel, people,
Yes.
but it's like the one thing too, that I think that sometimes people, this is what makes me sad about it, is that they really truly feel like there's no other way. They have to be somebody else that they're not, or, with filters and with, it's like, for me, it's so important that it's just, I had to think about that. But Origami Al, I worked so hard my whole life. Like, I love to work. That not working for me, I think, is what really sort of killed that. When I couldn't get a job, I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Like, I have experience. Like, I have worked my whole life. Like, I have life experience. Like, I can do this. And so being with Origami Al, it wasn't something that I thought I could make money doing. I honestly, truly tell this to this day. I am somebody that I was the biggest skeptic. I was like, I'm not a salesperson. I have a college degree, and this is not my life purpose. And this is how I am. And then very quickly, that first month with O2, I made more money than my husband. I remember coming home and crying, because I was able to pay the bills, and I was able to provide Christmas for our daughter, and I was able to put food on the table. And I looked at him and I thought, is this real life? Like, this is reality. And he was just like, oh my gosh, it makes you happy. First and foremost, it brought joy to my life.
Yeah.
And then I just kept going. And so I remember I would take the small wins, and I tell people that to this day. I celebrate everything, small, big. Nothing is too small. So for me, I remember getting in. I started 10 years ago, but I wasn't one of the first people to join. I joined the first year, but I wasn't like one of those first people. And again, I think because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't have support. I didn't have anybody showing me the ropes. I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody did. We just sort of were doing what we were just going for it.
Yeah.
And so I remember I almost quit about 3-4 years in, and then we had our first lead. And I remember it was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Chrissy got up, and I remember going to this, and I thought, okay, it was 2016. I said, all right, this is my make it or break it. Like, this event is either going to light the fire under my booty, or I'm out the door. Like, meh. And Chrissy Weems got on stage, and she was just talking, and that I remember sitting there looking at her like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, and I remember leaving that trip and thinking, I can do this. And the funk that I had felt the last 3 years, being an entrepreneur is hard. It is hard. You
Yes.
you have to rely on yourself. That's why I say people who work in food industry, this is the perfect gig for you, because if
Mm,
you can work in food service, you can literally do anything. So I literally had to take it back to like my food service days, being a dishwasher, being a hostess, being a server, being a bartender, all of these things, because you have to learn how to fight for
mm,
your place. You
mm.
have to learn grit and determination and resilience. And being an entrepreneur is that you don't have anybody else to rely on but you for your paycheck. Like, it comes down to you
Yeah.
and your skills. Like, actually, I always say it's the will, not the skill. You have to want it bad enough in order to get it. And so for me, it was like Origami was so fresh, and I mean, it still is. It's such an amazing
Mhm.
company, an amazing culture, right? And so I just sort of ran with it that year, and that was the year that I really say my business started, because I joined in 2012, but 2016 was the year that I just literally pulled myself up off the ground, and my business went full force. And I didn't use excuses in my life anymore. I didn't use the lack of mentorship or guidance or help. And that was the year that I just gunned it. I literally gunned it, and I fell, I screamed, I cried, I punched the wall. Again, not the company's fault. It was my own, because I didn't give it my all. You said in the beginning, the grass is greener on the other side. And I always say to Tyson, the grass is greener where we water it, right? And so it's like I wasn't watering my grass. I was just sort of like, it was so effortless for so long
I
that all
know
of a sudden I was like,
exactly what you're talking about. Like
yes,
exactly what you're talking about. I can feel it. I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
right. And it's like people don't realize attention goes where energy flows. And what you put into something, you're going to get out of it. So if you put the bare minimum, you're going to get the bare minimum out of it. If you gun it and you give it everything you got,
Yeah.
then you're going to get all of that back. And so that was when I started learning, like, okay, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to be, and my social media sucked. Like, it was just not good. I didn't know what I was doing. No, but we still don't know what we're doing. And I honestly just sort of like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I didn't want to be like everybody else. I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I am not going to be like the rainbow and roses cutesy fartsy girl. Like, that's just not me. And so
Hmm.
it took me a couple of years to find I still don't know what my niche is, or niche, or whatever we call it. I honestly don't. It's just kind of doing whatever I want, making people happy. And
Yeah.
like, it's Origami Owl saved my life. It saved so many people's lives. The culture is amazing. This company, there is nothing like it anywhere else. We know that. You and I both know that.
Yeah.
And there are people that come back to it because they say the same thing. It's like, I left because they struggle. Then they come back and they're like, I missed this, because the culture is just so good.
Yeah.
And so O2 for me has been my saving grace. And now, thank goodness, right? We have, which is phenomenal, like even better. And so I just when you think it can't get any better, it does. But just like any job that you have, I say, I actually eventually did get a career. I had a 9 to 5, and I did both that 9 to 5 and my O2 business for 4 years together straight. And
Wow.
it killed me. I had no drive. I was tired all the time. I hated my day job. And so I quit that and went back to O2 full time. And that's what I do now full time. And it's still a struggle for me, because I don't have anybody else to fall back on. I am my paycheck. I am the person that I have to rely on. I am responsible for people. I am responsible mostly for myself and my name and the brand that I built for myself, and that's important to me. And so that's where the authenticity comes in. And what I love about O2, and thank goodness now, is that it's a company where you don't feel like you have to belong to a certain group. It's sort of like we all mesh together to this one
Mhm.
beautiful, diverse family. You know what I mean? This one
Mhm.
group, one table, we all sit together at that same table. So it
Mhm.
is definitely a blessing in my life. I can't imagine doing anything else. I truly now can't do anything else with all of my tattoos. Unless so it's like I don't want to ever do anything else. This is
Yeah.
what I love to do. So again, everything that happened in my life, it did shape me for this moment now here.
Mhm.
because I don't think I would be as tough as I am, or the person that I am, or the mentally strong, tough person that I am, if I didn't go through all
Mhm.
of these experiences. The businesswoman that I am, if I
Mhm.
hadn't gone through this.
Yeah,
So
totally. And I will second everything you said. Origami Owl is literally a life-changing company. Like I remember I was in high school when I joined because they have that awesome young entrepreneurs program. And I've never seen anything like that, but I always had such a drive and I was like such a little businesswoman. Everyone's like, you should start selling stuff. And I'm like, I don't have anything to sell. And I remember when I came into Origami Owl, I was at a low point in high school with no friends, feeling exhausted, burnt out, tired, having no outlet, just grind, grind, grind. And when Origami Owl came into my life, and you talk about Chrissy Weems is the co-founder, and she's like the boss lady of the whole company. And she's amazing. She's also touched my life because when I went to convention for the first time, that's when I was like, oh,
she's amazing.
what? Like, oh my gosh, like it's I don't know how to change it other or explain it other than it is literally life changing. Like that is point blank what it is. Those people put something in me that I will be forever grateful for because it has really shaped who I am. And since I got at it when I was young, it's really helped me now that I'm growing up into a young adult.
I said to somebody this morning, I was telling them that I was doing this. I remember the first time I ever saw you on stage, and I remember Tyson actually standing on stage near you and motioning to me like this one. I'm like, I know. And afterwards, we talked about you. And so I've seen you you are such a bright, shining light. I want you to know this. And I have watched you just grow, 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 grow so much over the last few years that I'm really proud of you. And I think what you're doing is just so phenomenal. You're a
Oh,
phenomenal
thank
person.
you. That
So
really warms my heart. I remember being on the stage. That was the first time when I told my story on like the huge stage. That was the first time that I was actually helped me really like point my career into a really awesome direction where I'm like, I want to do this. I want to share my story. I want to be a motivational speaker. And it put like this crazy dream in my head, which is still there, but it's a little bit different now with the pandemic and everything. But I really appreciate that you said that because that, yeah, it just means a lot. So thank you. Um,
welcome.
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. So, usually what I do is I do a final 5 questions, but I want to ask you about one thing first. And it is, I saw that you did the 75 hard challenge.
I did.
And
Oh,
I watched you on social media the whole way through. I loved it. Thank you for sharing that on your social media. But I want you to tell us what that challenge is and what it did for you.
so it's interesting that you asked me this. And I know that when Tyson watches this, he's going to laugh because the 75 hard for me, over the course of the last 17 years, I have struggled to lose weight. I don't want to be, I know I'll never be where I was. For me, it was more about health. I went from being somebody who was a fitness, a fanatic and athlete to
Mhm,
being in the worst shape of my life, and not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. So I
mhm,
got to the point where I had wanted to do the 75 hard in 2020, and then COVID hit. And I remember being so angry. I was like so mad about COVID. I was like, I can't work out outside. Like it's too cold and my gym was closed, all the excuses. And then early 2021, I fell really ill. I went to the emergency room, and I remember I was like, oh man, it was my gallbladder. And
oh
for
no.
17 days, I was on a liquid diet and I was miserable. I couldn't eat. They wouldn't remove my gallbladder because it was COVID and because I wasn't an emergency, until finally one day I was. So after I got my gallbladder out, I remember feeling like, all right, I am done. I've got to do the 75. This is the only thing that's going to help me in
Mhm,
it. And you have to prove to yourself, nobody else but you, that you can do this because you know you can. So when we got back from that Florida trip for '02, it was July 1st. I remember I started the 75 and I had already known what it was. So the 75 is a challenge. It's a mental fortitude challenge. People think it's all physical, and it does require physical, but it's all in your head because your body won't go where your mind won't take it. So remember that, like everything is in your head. So when you tell yourself this is too hard, I'm too tired, my leg hurts, my head hurts, you're literally putting those thoughts into your head. Your body can keep going. It's your mind that's saying, you're done, stop doing this. So I really pushed myself. The 75 hard is 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes minimum. One has to be outside, regardless of the weather, because life is never perfect, right? Just like the weather. And so you have to be able to work in conditions that normally wouldn't be perfect, or,
Mhm.
conditions you normally would. The whole point is to get out of your own head and work through all the obstacles. You have to do 10 pages of personal development a day. You have to cut alcohol out, no cheat meals, drink a gallon of water a day, and then, eat on a healthy plan, whatever you want. So for me, I had already stopped drinking, so alcohol wasn't the issue. I already do personal development, so that wasn't an issue. I already drink a gallon of water a day. That wasn't the issue. The workouts weren't even an issue. What was an issue for me was the food, putting enough food in my mouth, because I am somebody that doesn't like to eat a lot. And so that for me was like, okay, and then working out outside. So I started July 1st, and I remember the first 2 weeks were the worst because it was hot. I was like, "Oh, this was stupid. Why did I start this in the summer? Like, this was dumb." But it that was that challenge changed me, and I remember the first 30 days being so emotionally unstable. I went through every emotion you can imagine. My body hurt. It physically hurt. People were calling me crazy, like, "You can't do this." I'm like, "Yeah, I can do it. I'm doing it." I got so many messages on my Instagram, from people that were telling me to stop. I can't, I was too fat. You're not going to finish. You're weak. You're killing yourself,
You're
or this is
kidding
bad
me.
for you. No, this is bad for you. You don't know what's good for your body. You're doing too much. And, for me, it was like talking to other people that had previously done it and learning. There's no rest days. You're working out every single day, but working smarter, not harder, right? So for me, it was like those rest days were yoga or a light walk. Still 45 minutes. One was still outside, but it wasn't like I was pounding the pavement, running miles and miles on those. It was like, okay, one day a week. And then slowly, what I learned was that the workouts that I had done previous to this, because I do love the gym, were the same thing over and over. So I knew in order for me to succeed, I had to mix it up. So that was the day I went into the gym. It was like day 6 of the 75. I said, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off and take a freaking class, even though I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what I was doing. I met some of my very dear friends that I love to this day now. I formed a really cool group of people at the gym, and I started taking classes. So like tone and sculpt, body combat, hot yoga,
Yeah.
yoga, like all these crazy classes, right? That kicked my butt,
Mhm.
changed me mentally, physically, emotionally. I know that I would not have been able to complete it had I not mixed it up. But I also traveled in between all of this. So we went to Tucson, and I knew that I had to keep it going. I was like, I am not starting this over. I am not starting over. I went from Tucson and then to convention this last year.
Yeah.
So we went to convention, and I remember like thinking, oh my gosh, I have got to finish this, because I was on day 69 when we went to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And so everybody was like rooting for me, like, oh, so I was getting up at 5 a.m. when Tammy and Courtney were fast asleep. I was like, I gotta go work out. And I would go and I would meet a couple of the girls from O2, and I would run to the workout at the resort at the gym. And we would pump iron, and we would run, we would work out. And then I would head back, take a shower, and go to convention. And then I would literally get both of my workouts done first thing in the morning, no excuse, right? And I was carrying around my gallon jug. And I remember people were like, "You're crazy." I'm like, I have to finish this. I am not quitting. And on the last day of the 75 hard, I remember telling Tyson this. I was dreading it, because when I finished that last triathlon, that's when my life fell apart. I had nothing more to work towards. I'm a big goal-oriented person. And I
Mhm.
was dreading finishing the 75, because I was like, what am I going to do when this is over? Like, I'm not going to have anything to work towards. And I remember doing the last workout, and since you follow me on social, but like I was very active, going live, sharing my journey with people. I cried on that live. I cried because I was so devastated that it was over, because it changed me mentally. And I thought, man, I wish I had had this 10 years ago. But if I did, I wouldn't be the person I am now.
Right.
It wouldn't be the same. And so it devastated me. It devastated me that it was over. And I kept going through my workouts, and then I got ill. I had some health issues with my nerves and my arms and my legs. And
Mhm.
I wasn't able to physically do the things that I was doing. And, I love going to the gym. So I thought, oh, great, here comes another obstacle. And so January 1st, I attempted to do the 75 again. because I wanted to go round 2. I wanted to actually complete his Live Hard program, which is a full year. So you do the 75 first, and then he has 3 phases after that that are 30 days. And it
Okay.
is stupid hard, dumb, like taking a cold shower for 10 minutes. That's the worst part. So
I remember you making a post. You're like, this is going to be the hardest part, the
it was
cold
awful.
shower.
I recorded my voice when I got in and I was screaming. And I was like, why do people take cold showers? This is so dumb. Like, it is the dumbest thing that we could ever do as human beings. And I hated it so hard. But then I wasn't physically able to complete the workouts anymore because of my nerve pain and my nerve issues. And so I struggled again. And I remember feeling like, oh, great, I didn't finish the 75 hard again. But the guy that created the 75 hard, he literally said 2 weeks ago, all right, I got to go in round 3 again because I got sick. And he goes, you know what? That's owning my shiz. And I got to just make it happen again. So I thought, you know what? That's real. That's authentic. Like, life happens to us. I'm not giving up. I just had to take a break. And so it's, for me, I will always recommend it to people. And I tell people all the time, it's you against you. And it's not physical. It's all here. And you have to remember that. So I really encourage people to try it because it will change your life. It will change your life.
And just so the listeners know, you keep talking about Tyson. Do you want to tell us who Tyson is, even though I know?
Tyson is one of our co-founders here at Thank Goodness. And he is, I consider him a mentor and a guy, somebody who I look up to. He is definitely one of my, he's a great friend of mine. I have so much respect for him professionally, but also he is a mentor to me. He is someone that has really helped mold me the last several years up here, and break out of that. I was such an angry person, going through what I did. I blamed everybody. I was a victim. I was blaming everyone. I was such a angry, I wanted to fight everyone. And when he came into my life, he sort of like calmed that version of me down. We joke about this all the time. And then he started to help me see things differently and really working on self-awareness, personal development, and just mindset. So I joke that he is the angel on my shoulder, and I got David Goggins on this shoulder, and I got Tyson Dash on this shoulder. And so I definitely consider him as a mentor to me.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank God for that guy.
That is so awesome. And that kind of just brings up another question that I have for you. So did you get into like personal growth, like self-improvement when Origami Owl came into your life? Or did you kind of start that when you were going through all your challenges?
It was in 2016, I think, really when I started, because like I said, I was such an angry person that I'm a big reader. And even though I hated school, I loved learning. And so for me, I really love, I start my morning. I have a routine now. I wasn't a morning person until I was. And this is one of the things that I actually learned from Tyson, but also he says, oh, I got this from you too, because he wasn't a morning person. And when we were in Florida, actually, I was getting up at like 4:30 a.m. in my time, because it was 6:30 in Florida, right? And I was going for runs on the beach and walking. And he was like, I'm still asleep and you're on the beach. I'm like, I'm taking advantage of being out here. I'm taking advantage of a different environment. I'm prepping myself for the 75, right? I'm trying to do this. So for me now, it's personal development is vital to my existence. It's vital, I think, to anybody in order for you to survive. And really, truly, especially as an entrepreneur, it's so important. It's a key component to my day, just like gratitude. But like every morning I get up, no matter what day it is, I am up by 6, no matter what. And I can't help it. It's my internal clock now. And when the days are good, I'm outside, but I meditate. I don't even have coffee yet. I meditate, I pray, I write down my gratitude for the day. I give thanks. And then I do tarot. So I've been doing tarot most of my life. And so I do my cards. It's a way that I journal for myself. Then I have coffee and I reflect, right? Those are the things that I do. That's the time for myself every single day. I think it's so vital for you to have that. And people say, well, I don't have time. You have time. You're just not making the time. So
Yes.
you are the most important person in your life. You have to prioritize you first, which is where my morning routine comes in and my gym comes in. So personal development for me started in 2016. And then really, that was the year that Tyson and I sort of like took it to that next level with mindset. And then it's only gone up from there. So yeah, it wasn't until 2002, and it wasn't until I was like maybe 4 or 5 years in that I started really focusing on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, something that you said that I was like, yes, is like you don't love school, but you love learning. And I'm like,
Right.
I love that because couldn't be closer to the truth. Like, I'm like, why does there always have to be an exam after something? Like, why can't I just learn it?
The test is life, right? That's the test,
Yes.
the
Yeah,
ultimate. For real.
exactly. So what did you do to kind of get into that morning routine? Because I'm someone who is like looking into it and I'm like, 6 seems a little early. Like I can barely get out of bed past 8. Like,
Well, and I think that, it's just, I got to the point where now I crave it. I look forward to getting up in the morning because,
Mhm.
oh, I need that time for myself. That sets the tone for my day. That sets everything for me. I don't know. I don't even remember how it started. I just remember one day saying, all right, you're so busy during the day and you are so busy at night that like you have no excuse. You have to make the time.
Mhm.
And so I knew that the only time to do it was in the morning. And I'm a coffee drinker. I love coffee. I don't drink alcohol. I think I have a glass of wine here and there now, but I don't drink it like I used to. So coffee is my vice. And so I actually tell people I wake up to drink coffee. Like that's my goal. Like I get excited about waking up the next day. So it was for me the quiet time before the chaos of my life, like my family and my animals waking up and like the rest of the world. And so for me that is, I don't know how it started. I just know that I can't live without that time. It's
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely want to get into that because I've heard so many benefits of it, but it's your mind. Every time I
It
just
is.
let my
You just
mind win.
You
Yeah.
just have to start. Like for me, it takes 21 days to build a habit, they say, and it's true. You just like set your alarm and just go for it and make it happen. And maybe it's not 6, maybe it's 7:30, but
Mhm.
just start small and start with 15 minutes and then work your way a little bit earlier, a little bit earlier. And now it's like, oh, I've become my dad where I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. I can't help it.
I love that. So before we move into the final 5 questions, do you want to say anything else before we move on to those questions?
I'm just really grateful for this opportunity today. I'm grateful for you for
Thank you.
doing this because this I think is such a huge, it's important for people to know that they are not alone, that there are other people that have gone through the things that maybe they're experiencing, and that there is hope, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that you do deserve to be here and you are worthy and you
Mhm.
do have purpose.
Yeah.
And to keep going, literally just keep going and
Yeah.
never regret anything that has ever happened in your life, ever, ever, ever. No regrets. I have zero regrets.
I love that. That's great final words. And I mean, you have done an excellent job of showing us that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and to just keep going. I always use a hashtag. My hashtag is just like keep going. Hashtag keep
Yes.
going because I always do it because I'm like, that's the truth. Literally, I am just holding on by a thread, but at least I'm getting up out of bed. So
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So let's roll into the 5 final
Okay.
questions. So what is some of the best advice you've received and from whom?
Well, it's gonna be homeboy. He literally
Yeah.
reminds me all the time that life is happening for me and not to me.
Mhm.
That is the one thing that I will always take away from that friendship.
And that specific lesson, how did it play into your life? Like how big of a change did that provide for you?
It's still a change to this day. I've been struggling a lot with the nerve pain and not being able to work out like I have been. And, no matter on the days that I feel like I'm just being completely defeated, the universe is out to get me. We all have those moments where we still feel like that. He is literally the voice in my head, David Goggins, Tyson over here. It's like, oh, these two. And it's like reminding me that this is happening for me and not to me, that there is a lesson in everything and that every moment is a moment to be grateful for. And I just feel like, knowing where I've come from, knowing what I've gone through, it's the truth. It really is truly the truth. And there is going to be a reason. And, we can say, oh, I'm so tired of starting over. I'm so tired of starting over. This isn't happening for me. This is happening to me. When you flip the switch, all of a sudden, everything instantly changes for you. Your days get brighter. You feel your mood is lighter. You just feel stronger. And so that is the lesson that I've learned from switching the flipping the switch, that it's happening for me and not to me. I'm not a victim. I am a champion. I'm a fighter. I'm a survivor.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Mhm. That's very powerful. Okay, next question. What is the worst advice you've received?
I don't know. The worst advice I've ever received. I honestly don't know. I'm just thinking like, what is the worst advice that I
It's a
ever
tricky
received?
question. It's a
It
tricky.
is because I tend not to hold on to things like that. Like I'm such a person that like if what you're telling me doesn't serve me, I'm like, okay, like it's gone.
Yeah,
It's, you know,
gone. Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I hold on to some things that I probably shouldn't, and I own that too, but I don't, I honestly don't know. I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll just go right into the next question. So what is a piece of advice that you would tell your younger self or someone in the younger generation?
Ugh. Ugh. I had a feeling this was going to be one of these questions. I did. I was like,
It's my favorite question. I literally ask it to every single person I
it's
know.
a great question. It's a really great question.
It
I
gives
think
great
the
insight.
advice I would give is to not do anything differently. I would do everything the same over and over again. And because of who it has made me today, and to remember who you are, and to literally just keep fighting no matter what.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't think I think if I was to tell I used to think about this question too in my head, like, what would I tell myself at 17 that I now know at 44 or 43 or 40 or whatever? But like, I have to tell you that now at the time in my life, but when I was 17, I used to think 40 was like so old. Like,
Mhm.
that's my mom, like that's so old. But these are the best years of my life. And they have been the hardest and the best years of my life. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I would tell my younger self not to change
Trust
a
the
thing.
process. Trust
Yeah,
the process.
exactly. Do trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust the process. And also to be so grateful for every single moment that you experience, because
Mhm.
it goes by like that. And then you look back and it's gone. It's gone. So live in the moment and trust the process and have gratitude.
Yeah, love that. You're gonna love my next question. So
Oh,
I love to end. No, you are. You actually are gonna like
okay.
it. So I
Okay.
like to end our interviews in a state of gratitude. So I'd like to ask you, what are you grateful for?
I love this question. This is the tattoo that's on my hand so that it's an every single day reminder. But I love this question so much. And I have different things every day that I'm grateful for. And today I am grateful for this opportunity to see your beautiful, shining face. And truly, you're such a light. And to have the opportunity to share my story and to have this time with you. And I'm grateful for having this roof over my head, for waking up this morning, for the ability to go to the gym and work out, for feeling good today. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm grateful for a lot of things. So this is an easy question for me. I could literally sit here all day and be like, I'm grateful for this.
And list off a bunch of
I
things.
could, I
They're
could.
all practice.
I think I'm really grateful today for waking up this morning in such a good state, because I haven't been that way in a few days because I've had a rough week. And I
Mhm.
think today I'm just super grateful for waking up and feeling a lot lighter, and for having, some good conversations today with some people, including you, and
Mhm.
for going to the gym and letting all the shiz go that doesn't serve me. So that's what I'm grateful for today.
Love it. Thank you so much, Melissa. I've enjoyed every single minute of our conversation. It has been quite an emotional roller coaster to hear what you've been through, but to see that you've come out to be so strong in the end and the amazing life that you're living, but acknowledging that, not every day is perfect. We still have our ups and downs, but I just really appreciate you coming on here and being so vulnerable and open with everyone, because I know it is going to touch a lot of people and help a lot of people out. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Wow, I am speechless. What an amazing and inspiring conversation. I am literally on fire right now, and I am so excited for you guys to all hear this amazing conversation. I hope you had your notebooks out, because she gave a lot of great advice during the conversation. And again, thank you so much, Melissa, for being so vulnerable and open. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.